Today, I'm rating the training of UFC middleweight title contender Khamzat Chimaev. He's currently an undefeated 14-0 in his MMA career and is widely considered to be one of the best grapplers in UFC history. Let's take a look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of his strength and conditioning. The biggest strength of his programming is that there's a lot of good intent across the board. You can see obvious attempts to train the entire body through a range of different movements: upper body pulling and pushing, lower body pulling and pushing, and training of the torso in numerous planes of motion. You can also see him attempt to load the entire force velocity spectrum, some heavy and slow, some medium, some light and fast. I also think he makes some really good decisions in his off-mat conditioning. There's work being done below sport intensity through things like long, slow runs, and he's managing his orthopedic load through things like the air dyne and sprinting uphill as opposed to flat ground. Now, while the intent is there, the downside of this training is that the execution is pretty sloppy across the board, starting with his technique. Likewise, if you look at the strength that he displays in the octagon and the lone clip of him lifting reasonably close to failure, you can see that he's an extremely strong individual, and yet he never lifts close to his max in the gym, especially with lower body movements. And for context, I know of a UFC featherweight who's able to deadlift almost double his numbers with great form. Now, you could make the argument that he's lifting moderate loads to develop power, but if that's the case, the intent and speed of movement has to be there. And replacing a lot of these traditional movements like squats, bench presses, and rows with more ballistic movements would be a better choice, in my opinion. I also see what I consider to be some misunderstanding about biomechanics. He loves a standing bench press and also loading his punches with dumbbells. In the former exercise, if your shoulders are strong enough to keep the barbell horizontal throughout, the load is probably not heavy enough to stimulate your chest and triceps. And in the latter exercise, he's accelerating against the load of the dumbbell from the start of the punch and then actively decelerating at the end to stop the weight flying out of his hand. In an actual punch, all but the final contact is completely unloaded. You accelerate through the end and then create massive stiffness to try and wrap the other guy's face around your fist. The ugliest part of this program is the sheer amount of junk volume and activities that get performed. It's my opinion that dedicated strength and conditioning work exists specifically because there are some valuable physical qualities that cannot be stimulated by practicing or competing in the sport alone. Maybe there isn't enough rest, enough load, or the technical demands are so high that you can't fully express the force that you have. Consequently, when you give up valuable time on the mats to do strength and conditioning work, it makes sense to train the stuff that doesn't get stimulated by the sport, or to do an even better job of stimulating those qualities. What does a ladder drill do that shooting or sprawling at full speed does? What does slamming a medicine ball do that snapping down an opponent doesn't? They can for sure make you tired. I'm just not sure they make you any better. Overall, I would rate the Wolves program a D+.